Welcome to our Fortuna Masterclass, What Makes a Standout MBA Essay. Now, for more than 20 years, Stanford GSB has asked every single MBA applicant the same question: what matters most to you and why? Tens of thousands of candidates have tackled the question that the school has never changed because the best answers reveal the great candidates. In the past 3 years, Wharton has asked you how you're going to contribute to their community. Fuqua asks for 25 random things about you. LBS and INSEAD want to explore what really drives you. Now, think about the range of those possible MBA essays. They look completely different, but brilliant applicants sometimes fall into that trap of writing what they think the school wants to hear, or something rather than something that only you could have written. So over the next 50 minutes, we're going to take apart what a great MBA essay actually does, why introspection beats achievement, the mistakes that can sink a strong candidate, and how to write something that only you could have written. Now, whether you're joining us live or you're watching this on a subsequent recording, by the end of this session, you're going to know how to start, what to cut, and how to turn the questions that you've been dreading into the strongest part of your whole application. Have I built this up enough? Now, why am I so confident? Because you're going to hear it from two people that I love who have read these essays from inside the MBA admissions office. I'm the one sitting in the middle, Matt Simmons. I'm the co-founder of Fortuna Admissions and a columnist for lots of media about business education, but the expertise is sitting on either side of me. Emma Bond brings the view from London Business School, and Michelle Belden sat on the admissions committee at Wharton. So when they tell you what works, it's because they have been the readers on the other side of the page. Ambitious for what we're going to get through, ladies? Wow. 50 minutes for all of this. Why essays matter and what schools are looking for, the credibility of what you're sharing with the schools, optional essays. I think we've got everything covered. And of course, Fortuna viewers, as always, please put your questions in the Q&A as we go. I will try to thread them in, and we'll get the insight and expertise of Michelle and Emma. Or right at the end, we've got a Q&A session to keep us going. But we've got to start somewhere. And Emma, I'm going to turn to you about this big picture of why MBA essays matter. Now, Emma, from your time at London Business School, can you explain why essays can be such a powerful tool for applicants?
Yeah, hi Matt, hi Michelle. It's lovely to be with you both. We're just entering a heat wave here in the UK, so it's rather warm this afternoon, but very nice to be here, and welcome to everybody who's joined us. So one of the things that is so interesting about MBA essays is the point that you made, Matt, at the beginning, right? There is this huge variation of essay topics, and every school where they're digging into the different kind of facets of your profile that they particularly want to explore is able, alongside the usual metrics that everybody's looking for, which is your CV, which is your recommendations, which is the professional trajectory that you've had. Each school is able to then set out the kind of deeper understanding of how they want to get to know you within these different essay topics. So yes, Stanford, what matters most to you and why. One of my favorites is the Duke essay that you mentioned, 25 random things. And then there are a lot of schools that have essays which are based largely or broadly around your career goals and what you want to do when you graduate, when you finish your MBA. But one of the reasons that the essays are so important is that it enables you to move outside those kind of almost like tick box points that the schools want to know about, so the GMAT or GRE score, and to really dive into the kind of motivations, why do you want to do your MBA? So it helps admissions committees understand who you are beyond the resume, beyond the big four or the MBB or the investment banking profile or the business that you've built, to really understand the motivations and the things that drive you and make you passionate about doing the MBA. So whereas with a test score, you have to, well, you can do it online, but you go along to a test center and you have to sit an exam that is being created by someone else, and you are going to get your score and then probably go back and sit it again and hopefully get a slightly higher score. The essays give you a chance to really self-reflect and share that additional part of yourself. So one of the things that AdComs are looking for within the narrative of your essays is the evidence of self-reflection, how you communicate and how you share the skills that you have. So it's a part of the application that is really yours. Okay, it's something that you have control over, and it's your way of putting that point across to the admissions committee in a way that a test score or the professional background is kind of done and dusted. So it's not something you can really change when you get to the point of thinking about bringing your application together as a whole. So it does really give you an opportunity to shape your story, to sit back, think about the different experiences that you've had within your life and really bring them to life for the person who's reading your application. Because as we all know, Michelle and I, as you said, we've sat on these admissions committees, we have read thousands of these applications. You really want something that will grab the reader's attention. If you are coming to it as an admissions reader and you've already read 25, 30 essays in that session, you want something that really makes you stand out, that will grab your attention and go, okay, yes, this person has a great CV, but so do the other 30 sort of applications that I've read. But what is it about this person that really makes me want to meet them, that really makes me think they have something of value to add, and the MBA that we offer would be a really good fit for them, and I can see them contributing and then going on to be a standout alum in the future. So it really is a way to sort of show what you've done before and connect your past experiences to the future goals that you might have. So the admissions committee, as we've said, they want to know what makes you memorable through the essays that they ask. And it really is a very big differentiating factor in terms of who is going to get through to interview. And as probably we may touch on at some point, but the video interview this year, particularly, more and more schools are leaning into that as well. So written essays for sure, but also video interviews.
Emma, there's among those bullet points, there's one phrase that I just like to stop on because I find it to be very empowering. And the idea
Mm.
that this part of the application is fully in your control. Often with a blank page, writing your story can seem daunting, and yet it's actually an extraordinary opportunity.
Absolutely. And it does depend a bit on the particular essay topic that you are sort of addressing at the time, but many schools will have 2, 3, 4 essays. I think INSEAD's dropped down from the 7 that they had, but many schools will give you a lot of opportunity through the essays to really share that story. And it enables you to put yourself on the page in a way that you want to be perceived. So it does give you control over how you angle some of your story. If there is something that you are not so proud of, or somewhere where you did have a failure, for example, it allows you to tell that story and explain, the situation behind it. So yeah, it's very much a way for you to just drive your own narrative and put yourself out there in the way that you want to be seen.
Right. Both of you are among the world's most successful admissions coaches. There are entire legions of students, of course, now graduates that have gone to the top schools in the US and internationally. Michelle, you've sat on the Wharton admissions committee. What were you hoping to learn about a candidate from their essays that perhaps the rest of the application simply couldn't tell you?
Yeah, I mean, Emma, thank you so much. And I'm so excited to be here. And you said it so well, you covered so much. And I think what we're really looking for, as Emma said, when we're on the other side and reading essay after essay, is looking to make that connection with the reader, that they're like, oh, I am learning more about who you are, your character, what drives you, what setbacks you've had, and how have you come out of that stronger and more mature. So showing that self-awareness and where are you headed? So that is, like Matt said, you said at the very beginning, it's not a, what do they want to hear? Let me tell the school, what I think they want to hear. They want to hear about you. And you're the only one who can tell your story. So really to be able to show your self-awareness, that you've been intentional in the steps you've taken with your career so far, and where are you headed? And that you really can demonstrate, again, how you think, how you lead, how do you join a team and collaborate, and a lot more importantly for all these schools, how do you learn, and what do you still need to learn to go forward? So again, it's all the core is who you are, and really showing them how you feel, the values that you have, and how they've really led the choices you've made to get you to where you are today. And the way you can do that, and what are we looking for, is to do it in, most of the schools do have a word limit. So you are concise, and every sentence adds value, right? And we're getting to learn about you. In each of those sentences, then they build your story for us to really, understand where you've been and where you're headed. And I think that goes with, what are we looking for, is that you do, most of the schools in some way, maybe within the application, if not the essay, is your career vision. Where are you headed? How do you see your path unfolding going forward? And really for all of us, and I think Emma would agree, is really getting to the why behind it. So giving us the understanding of what have been your experiences, how have they really informed where you want to go going forward. So if that's continuing on the path, if that's a pivot, etc. So we're really looking for you to be able to articulate that very clearly and with a sense of passion and excitement for what's next for you, right? And then that would go along with bringing in, the elements, depending again on the school's essays and prompts, that school specifically, and being able to demonstrate an understanding of their community and how you're really hoping to join, how you really see the benefits of what they're offering within the curriculum, the people, and the investment you're making within the program, but really afterwards as an alumni and the lifelong learning opportunities they will offer you. So really, going into the essays with this, I really do think it's this excitement of empowering yourself to be able to, be like, I get to tell them who I am. I get to show them. Again, we will have presented them all the tick boxes through the data forms and application, but the essays will bring me to life. So we're really looking for, and then ultimately across all the different dimensions of the application, the essays really can showcase your teamwork, your leadership potential. And the emotional intelligence is really, how do you empower others? How do you step into a room? How do you engage? And those are things that you can bring to life through the essays. It takes work, it takes iterations and reflection, but I mean, Emma would agree that's ultimately, I think the success of our clients is the ones that have done that then again can get them to that next interview, et cetera, but really can tell their story beyond a bullet point on a resume, et cetera.
I love this idea of actually flipping the essay questions to reveal something about the school. Kellogg would have you think bravely. NYU had you sharing photos, which I guess aligns with the school that focuses a lot on emotional quotient and EQ. Yeah. Now, with all of you mentioned word limits, and both of you will remember a time where M7 schools had no word limits, and you'd be looking at 5 pages. Michelle, is that also to anticipate the classroom? They're not going to give you the microphone to 17 minutes to ramble.
That's right. I mean, it's really being mindful of, okay, you have a limit. What are you going to do with that space? If it's a little bit more limited, is it a little bit bigger? I will say Chicago booth is, I believe, and we will see this year, continuing to give you a word minimum, Matt. So they actually on the opposite end, they're like, we're going to say 250 and then go where you want with this, right? And obviously, Em and I, we have great tips and, for our clients to, be mindful of their time. And I think there's also, you can tell your story in a 400-word essay, 500-word essay, because you need to focus on what's most important to you. And what is it that you really want to make sure that they are gleaning from this essay about who you are. So to your point, sure, we could ramble on and on and on, but if we really had to only have, a minute for the video essays, going back to Emma, to tell them about ourselves, what would we really focus on? So it is a great exercise to go through to really think about, okay, what is, honestly, the choices I've made, my purpose, and how do I say that? And that's why I said every sentence needs to add value. It's not a creative writing contest, as one of my colleagues told me many years ago, but there is this element of, telling a story, and you can do that with a limited set of words, but more than enough. And again, everyone gets it. So everyone's in the same bucket that they have that. So at least it's also, everyone is graded against each other in that same space that they're using.
Yeah. Well, we talk a lot about enjoying this opportunity. Strangely enough, but this chance to step back and really think deeply. But each word can count. Perhaps early on, before we look at some of the different formats of essays, Emma, let's also map out what not to do. We'll be, the most of the webinar will be given this great advice about directions to take. But take us through some of the traps that candidates fall into. Common essay mistakes that you see.
I think we could do a whole separate webinar about what not to do, to be honest. It's a lot of the things that we discuss with our clients. But I think, one of the things that Michelle was talking about making every word count, and that is one of the things really not to do. So I talk to my clients about what you need to have and what's nice to have. And ideally, when you have covered what you need to have, there will be a little bit of room left to have what's nice to have as well. But I think more and more as people are utilizing AI, and I do think there is a place for AI in MBA preparation, but people have to be so careful because within that sort of need to have, they might put in what they think they need to have into ChatGPT or whatever, and it will just regurgitate out to you an essay that is unbelievably generic in terms of it doesn't have that understanding of you and who you are. It can't understand the period of self-reflection that you've hopefully undertaken to put yourself out on the page. So I think definitely it is a tool, but it is one that has to be used extremely carefully. And when we work with our clients, I can always tell if somebody sends me a draft and they've just gone into to use AI and they've sent it to me, and I'm like, I go back and I say, we have to relook at this. Because what you then end up with is a very generic response, which is not something that's going to elicit that kind of reaction from the admissions committee reader that you want, and it doesn't dig into that sort of level of emotional intelligence. In terms of authenticity, that's something that you need to be really careful about. So all the time people will come to us and say, oh, I've been reading on Reddit, or I've been looking at, talking to somebody, and they've told me that for this school I have to write my essays this way or that way. And if you go down that path, you are again going to come up with something that really tracks as inauthentic for the reader, and that's not where you want to be. You want to create something that is uniquely yours excuse me, that will really show your drive, show your narrative, show your why, as Michelle was talking about. And the only way really to do that is to sit and take time within yourself and to think about, where have I been before? Where am I at now? How will this specific MBA help me? And where do I want to go in the future? And I tend to think about it almost like an A plus B equals C. A is what I've done before, plus this MBA equals C. This is where I want to go. And if you can create that kind of reasonably linear narrative for an admissions committee, then it will give them a better understanding of who you are and what those motivating factors are. But if you are just focusing on what the school wants to hear, then it's not something that is going to really achieve that for you. I always recommend not parroting from the school's website. So there's that temptation if you have an essay like what's your contribution, like the second Wharton essay, which asks about your contribution to the school, or Columbia, which asks about the partner, how will you co-create your partnership with Columbia as you go through your MBA. There's always this temptation to kind of produce what we call a laundry list, which is to go onto the school's website and say, oh, look, well, there's a elective on this, and there's a global trip here, and I want to do this, and this. But if you are just regurgitating that kind of content without linking to why it matters to you and to what your why is, then you're going to end up with essays which they've all read before. And again, don't tell the admissions committee what the school offers. They already know that. What they want to know is how it's meaningful to you and how it will impact you and your goals, and create that kind of journey that they want you to succeed and they want you to gain from the program. We've all been in the position where you open up an essay for London Business School, and at the bottom of it will be, so I really can't wait to join Harvard. And it's a do not copy paste your essays from one school to another. It is never a good idea. So there's that obvious mistake, but in general, almost every school that we work on, which is all the top tier schools across the US internationally, they all have a different nuance. They all have a slightly different cultural fit. So there are crossovers. There are schools which are slightly finance focused, which are recognized as being very collaborative, et cetera, et cetera. But if you spend time to do your due diligence, you will begin to understand that the schools are different. So copy pasting is really not the way to go, because if you are a seasoned admissions reader, then it becomes, again, very clear very quickly that someone has just dropped in an essay from another program. And the last one there is an interesting one, because from time to time, dropping a name in a very strategic way can be useful if you have had conversations with a student or an alum. But just, again, just dropping in names for the sake of it, say, oh, I spoke to such and such, it really doesn't add a lot of weight to your essay. And actually, this is something, Michelle, I think you remember we've had some chats on our intranet, on our Fortuna intranet, about this, about what is the value of bringing in these names of people that you've spoken to. So I think there is some slightly different opinions on it. Mine is that they can be used, but very, very sparingly. And if you overdo it, it's just a bit of an ick for the admissions reader.
Michelle, I'm naturally going to turn to you to find out which names you're going to drop.
Exactly. No, I agree with Emma. We have had these discussions. If it was a really meaningful conversation, right, Emma, and it's really valuable to our clients, that it really informs them of, again, the fit with the school and the value add, it's a great strong sentence to include. Again, I'm always like, one name is fine. Other than that, I've seen less and less people do it, but I still see it once in a while. And if it really, again, builds your story and adds, understanding to your thought process, and again, that you've done your homework and your due diligence, and it's more than just dropping someone's name, then it's definitely useful. And I know we're going to get into it, but the speaking with students and alums is so valuable. And if it really goes beyond the, wow, I really would love to include that in an essay to really demonstrate, the fit with the school, then you should definitely do it.
Yeah. Now, both of you having read thousands of essays, applications, your comment earlier, Emma, about, generic will kill it because, an AI response, that already sits on top of a layer of everything that you know about a manager at one of the big four, an associate at BCG, I don't know, a junior analyst at Morgan Stanley. The schools from Pathways already know a lot about what a candidate. So to add on top of it this generic AI-driven response, where's the candidate in all of that, right?
Yeah, the candidate disappears, right? It's you want to get to know the person, not just the CV, not just the job spec. And AI can't do that, because AI doesn't know you as a person. So, for example, when we start working with clients, we send them our launch questionnaire, and it's really detailed. It asks all these things about defining influences in your life and all that. And I have had clients come to me and say, wow, you really want a lot of information. And we want that information when we start working with you, because it helps us understand who you are, and that then enables us to help you show the admissions committee who you are. And AI just can't do that.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned used to write for Bloomberg and Forbes. The Economist was the tricky one, because I often thought, well, if I can write a headline first, then I can fill in the rest of the blank page. But The Economist, they like to do their own very obscure Greek philosophy headlines. So I never knew where to start. Michelle, before a candidate even starts jotting down ideas for tackling an essay, what should they be doing first? How important is that reflection phase, and what does that process actually look like?
Yeah, it is, I think, the key to a successful application. I think Emma would agree. She just mentioned we have a launch questionnaire that we give our clients, and that's where they start. And I say it is quite comprehensive, but it's very reflective of both what most of the schools are asking you, but also it's that beginning point, if you haven't already started reflecting, that we, pose these questions to you, strengths, weaknesses, your values, and the most impactful projects you've worked on, et cetera. You need to start there, because you need to really show and understand again, you yourself have to take that time. What is your self-awareness of where have you been? What have been the choices you made? Why have you made them? Right or wrong? What have you learned? And to go back to your point of just the generic, answers of the, yes, we understand the path, consulting at Morgan Stanley, but what have been your big wins? What have been your struggles? What have you learned about yourself? But you need to start with this component. We just call it self-reflection, because it is going to blossom into your best and strongest stories, the experiences you've had that you want to share, depending on what the school's asking you through their essays. So again, what drives you? What are you passionate about? What makes you tick? What gets you up in the morning and excited? So those are the things. And if it's about clean tech, if it's about data analytics, what is going on with healthcare? But you need to ask yourselves these questions and understand how that's helped really guide you in the choices you've made in your career so far. I really think the values is a key thing. Some of the schools, they've been changing their essays, but used to really have those prompts about your values and have those values really, helped, make those choices you've made in your career so far, personally and professionally, to really make you who you are today. So the values are thinking about what's been instilled in you by a parent, by a grandparent, by a teacher, wherever you've been. But really, that's what pulling back the layers of your life, it's a big dig. And I will tell you, the value that you will find that it has at the end is so worth the time that you take at the beginning. So we really, really, really emphasize this is a key step. Other things to think about, of course, are your leadership. What have been those moments that you stepped up and taken on a leadership role? It could have been back during undergrad. It could be at work. You don't need the title. We'll go into that, but it's that experience. And what have you learned about yourself, about your leadership style? What kind of leader do you want to be? Being empathetic, a good listener, and really understanding that you've learned that, when I take on too much myself and don't delegate, that's probably not the best leadership, approach. But being that honest and authentic with yourself first in this reflection process is going to really shine in your essays. And that goes back to the AI component. We want to understand how you think and how you've thought and where you are today about really having that maturity of, I know who I am, where I really want to invest my time, what kind of leader I want to become, and the word impact I want to make. And that is going to be really, it's going to come and shine between all your essays, again, depending on what the essays are asking. But if you start here with that introspection, you will never be like, I wasted that time. It is absolutely a key component to this whole, really, like we said, application process, but a journey itself. And the starting point is really, to be honest with yourself and take the time, is you're going to be really appreciative. And if nothing else, when you come out the other end, and I think Matt and Emma, we've talked about this, is you really learned a lot about yourself. And it's a growth moment in and of itself just to go through this process.
Well, with the years that we've worked together, you tell me the incredible reward that you feel with the digging and this really smart mirror. Do you sometimes see this aha moment? When what makes you feel most alive? And you're the one that sees it on their face and says, "Hey, let's tell me more about this," right?
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I just had one of the best first calls, the kickoff call with one of my clients that had taken, so much time to fill out our launch questionnaire. And she shared with me that she actually shared it with her parents, because she really poured herself into it, of the reflection of, again, how they shaped her, growing up, the experiences that she had. And I was like, wow, like, do you know what I mean? Like, it really can be that, amazing opportunity that you even want to, things that she said I had never really said to my father before, that he didn't understand the impact he had when he, really gave me this leadership role as a young person to do this, plan our family vacation. And it's like, right. And it's like, especially as a parent, to have something like that of your children, really, the growth and the opportunity to do that, is that self-reflection that I don't think we all stop. We don't give ourselves the time, right? And this, that you are really pursuing something that is really meaningful to you, like attending business school, this is the key component to understand the why of the business school as well, of, how it's going to really, again, be a launching for your career, but really that moment of the growth and that you want to, where you want to go because where you've been.
Right.
It's really amazing.
Matt makes note to self of a new Fortuna module for the parents
Yeah,
of MBA applicants. Because, I mean, any of us, this business school, of course, channels us towards this introspection. I wish, you had both been in my lives when I was in my mid-20s. We'll have to work out because you'd have only been in kindergarten probably at that point. But, I mean, it is this extraordinary moment to step back, have those conversations with both of you and our other colleagues. Maybe there's something that the parents want to get out of this too. So now schools sometimes can keep things very open-ended. You mentioned INSEAD, they used to have those 7 essays, but it was all very clear what they wanted. But Emma, some of the most intimidating essay prompts are the most open-ended, the tell us about yourself style of question. Not many guardrails there. So how do you coach candidates to approach a question like this?
So I love these questions, to be fair. I think that it's the best opportunity to do that sort of self-exploration that Michelle's just been talking about, because you have to approach it from scratch. You can't just go, if it's a goals essay, yes, you might have a very clear idea of what those post-MBA goals are. But if it's a tell me about yourself, or if it's what would you like us to know about you, then that's such a broad canvas to start with. So I love this idea of thinking about your essay like a screenwriter, rather than just doing post MBA, I want to do this because I did X, Y, and Z. If you think about watching one of your favorite movies, or reading a favorite book, or thinking about a sort of a favorite TV series, a lot of the time they will approach the kind of central narrative through a really interesting, like, little snippet at the beginning or something. So for MBA essays, we tend to call that a hook. So it's some kind of personal anecdote or some kind of hint or story about your why, the why that makes you who you are, the why that has brought you to this point in your career where you are looking to do an MBA. So if you think about your essays like a screenwriter, and you focus on your narrative, the progression, the kind of key turning points that you've had in your life to date, then it will create a story that keeps the reader engaged. So rather than one of these sort of generic essays that we've been talking about. So the best way to do that is to do this brainstorm process, and as Michelle was saying, that's how we use our launch questionnaire, and that's how clients sort of dig into the things that are really important to them in terms of personal experiences. My goal when I work with clients, and when we go through this whole essay writing process and the entire application process, is that hopefully they get into a great MBA and their top choice or one of their top choice schools, but that this whole period of reflection and this whole process of essay writing will lead them to a point that by the time they start the MBA, they understand themselves so much better that they really understand how they're going to attack their MBA and what they want out of the process, and how that's going to kind of slot into the career journey and the personal journey that they've had so far. So digging into those kind of experiences, it often does bring an aha moment. You speak with clients and you find out things about perhaps personal things that have gone on in their life, and they're suddenly like, oh, actually, I can see how that's impacted me, and it led me to take that decision, and that's then led me to this decision. So there's almost like a dominoes effect of understanding and pulling out. And now, Michelle, because of what you said, I'm going to forever think about my clients as onions that I do, peeling off the layers. But it's very much about sort of, as we've been saying, connecting past decisions to future goals. Try not to be too generic about the experiences. Again, it's worth sort of really investing in time to think about which experiences are most powerful, because not all of them have a place in an MBA essay. But being sort of very specific, so using specific moments instead of giving a broad summary, is really usually the best way to get yourself into these open-ended essays. And it will then give you an opportunity to pull out those examples of leadership, to pull out those examples of personal growth. And then don't make the admissions reader say, so what? So there is again, I think there's a fine line between bringing out these personal stories, but they then need to be connected to that broader why question. So if you are answering the sort of tell me about yourself question, and you're bringing up a story about how your brother taught sort of quantum physics when he was younger, and you were invested in seeing how he did that, it's got to then be relevant to you, right? So it can't be just a story about somebody else. It's got to be I guess all fit together into this kind of jigsaw puzzle that creates this holistic profile of who you are and how it's getting you on the page for the adcom. So yeah, drawing out who you are, making sure that you are positioning yourself for the reader so that they want to meet you, they want to invite you to interview. If you go through that process of self-reflection and get yourself out there, then that's potentially the best way to approach these kind of open-ended questions.
You'd referenced earlier, Emma, the Duke Fuqua question about 25 random things about you. But
Mm.
if I come back to that, links, is it random, or is this underlying link, right? That's part of the ability to make that connection.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not just about saying I did this, it's about saying I did this and this is what it shows about me as a person, or this is why it drove me to take this decision, or this is why it's important in building out, showing my value add for your MBA program. So it is a great essay topic. I mean, it's been around as long as I can remember, because it is such a powerful way of getting insights into who a person is. Again, I guess it's that onion theory, right?
Yeah.
So all these different pieces of a candidate. But yeah, very much about connecting the dots, not just what you did, but why you did it. What was the rationale for the experience or the decision, or the things that you chose to do.
Now, I can see both of you between now and round one. You'll both have clients that say, so my life's like a TV series. Now, are they Breaking Bad, or are they Stranger Things? Or,
Yeah,
of course, if they're Game of Thrones, then perhaps it brings us to the leadership theme. Michelle, leadership essays, a staple of MBA applications. But what's the difference between a response that is going to genuinely resonate with the admissions reader and one that misses the mark and falls flat?
Yeah, and I think the leadership comes back to being specific and sharing your specific leadership opportunity story to really reveal how did you approach it? How did you guide your team? Was there a problem? How did you, work across teams? So I'll start with, again, we go back to you don't have to have that formal leadership title role next to your name to have a leadership experience to share with the admissions, a committee. But what you do need to have is an opportunity to step up, to take on additional responsibility, and to really highlight, how did you drive results? How did you delegate, different, tasks to your team members? How did you make those decisions? How did you empower your team? How did you, create a team that people shared their ideas and felt like they were heard and taken into consideration, even if you ended up going down a different path? So the choices you made, how did you think about the challenges? And then most importantly, what did you learn? What were your key takeaways from this experience? How did it shape you, what kind of leader, again, I've talked about what kind of leader you want to be, and that you have maybe been since that experience. Because these experiences really help reveal who you will be in the future, and and the experiences that you've had. And if you can focus on that specific moment, project, whatever it was, to reveal how you thought about it. Again, what did you feel? Like, why did you feel that way, given what you were tasked with? You had a short deadline, you had a deliverable that had to, the main person had to step away and you stepped into their shoes. So what was your first step? Who did you go to? How did you inform your team? And I think it's really the showing that is going to be specific and talk about you and that experience, rather than telling them, I did this. Well, you did this, but how did you do it? So I think that's really going to tell us about, again, if we go to the team dynamics, the inclusion piece, the collaboration piece, which again goes to team, but this leadership team is key to all the business school applications and the experience. And I really don't be afraid to be vulnerable, to have that challenge or a mistake, or actually really understanding maybe the management team above you and who maybe you're presenting to, and taking to get their buy-in. How did you really, get the buy-in of the management team, and influence them? So, and again, it's really thinking back to the right story to use to really highlight these aspects of your leadership style, and how did you grow through this experience, and your key takeaways, and ultimately the leader you aspire to become and be.
In terms of the right experience to choose, Michelle, you mentioned earlier, that's not necessarily a job title.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of candidates would assume, well, the more I advance, the more perhaps leadership opportunities. And they might look at the last 6, 12 months as the leadership must be there, right? Because this is where I am today. Presumably you're helping them to look over a longer time frame, something that could have been years ago and might have then, emerged and shown up in other ways since then. But it's not just from the last 6 months.
Absolutely not. Absolutely. And depending on what the essay prompt is as well, you can help you make a decision. But I mean, we can go back again to undergrad. There are many amazing clients that have started clubs, or, run an organization, or, headed up the consulting club's projects, or what, so yes, we can pull from, back, as an undergrad, or more recently, maybe it was the beginning of your career and you were given an opportunity to mentor, someone, whatever it was. That's why thinking back and having that reflection of these are my stories, and then really being able to choose your strongest story to reveal that leadership opportunity you had. And that is definitely sometimes, like Emma said, like sometimes our clients don't quite see it, and we do, because they were in it, and they're like, tell us more about what you did here. And and again, it is about, it does not have to be from the last 6 months to a year. And we know it doesn't have to be in terms of what the title was that you held, because many people are going to business school to gain those titles. But there are different opportunities within your life that you've had, that you've taken a leadership role. And maybe it also, again, in a community service organization, you were on a board, you changed, an event and raised this much money, but how did you go about it? What new ideas did you bring? Is right? So there's many ways and avenues to wear that leadership hat. And that's why there's not one right answer. And it's really for you, what has been that strongest, experience you've had taking on a leadership role?
Right. Emma, earlier on, we talked about co-creation at Columbia, and at the same time, they want a 50-character tweet on your job title and the company you'll be working with. I think you could talk about summer internship, how you use that, and of course, post-MBA career goals. They're very frequent in the applications. Now, a candidate's career vision, it can make or break an application. So what makes that goals narrative feel credible, perhaps feel compelling? Versus one that seems to just be vague and unrealistic.
Yeah, so career goals, and really taking time to think about what that looks like for you in the short term and the sort of midterm and in the long term, is absolutely crucial to any MBA application, whether or not they specifically ask you about it. And almost all schools do somewhere in the application. I can't think of any off the top of my head that don't. But making sure that you are clear about your goals, that you are ambitious, but that you understand how you plan to get there, is really, really key to these applications. And I think if you look globally, what's going on at the moment, with the sort of geopolitical situation, the economic outlook, recruiting has been tough, right? It's been difficult for schools. It's not been as easy as normal to place. I think we're seeing green shoots in some areas, which is great news. And, I think it will be great going forwards for these candidates. But in the meantime, if you are applying to business school, you need to be able to convince not only the admissions committee, but often somebody who's on there from careers, that you come in with the skills, that sort of the transferable skills, which when combined with the MBA will take you to where you want to go. So it's again part of the self-reflection in terms of what have I done before. So if I have been in a big consulting firm, how are my strategic thinking skills? What are my analytical capabilities? Am I a strong relationship manager, that because I've been, client facing for the last 2-3 years? What are the things that you have demonstrated in your previous role which you can bring in and which will make sense to a reader in terms of what you want to do when you graduate? Now, that's not to say that you can't explore different options on the MBA, because we always encourage people to do that. But in terms of gaining admission, and I think particularly in a tough recruiting environment, it's really important to be clear about, what those goals actually look like. So it's that sort of border of, or fine line, again, a bit of a tightrope of being really ambitious, because schools want people who are ambitious. They want to have a vision for their future. They want people who will go out and have impact, but it shouldn't be a kind of pie in the sky goal either. It should be something or with a path where the steps are there for them to see. So often having a short-term goal which has some kind of connection with what you've done before can be helpful with that. It doesn't necessarily have to be, oh, I've been a consultant, I'm going to be a consultant when I graduate, but it needs to be that you have showcased the kind of skills that you think you will need for that goal somewhere in your profile. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the professional capacity, but going back to what Michelle was saying about leadership, it could be that you've demonstrated leadership in I have a client at the moment who's on the board of a nonprofit for an accessibility charity. So she's demonstrating all sorts of different skills there. So if you bring those to the table in your essays, that can be one way of building out the narrative for the career goals and making sure that you connect it to what you've done previously. In terms of longer term, so Columbia again asks about what would be your dream job further down the road. So schools really do want to know that you have been thoughtful about what sort of impact you want to make in the future, and that you are intentional about the direction that your career will take. I think candidates who come across as a bit flaky, so without having that sort of thought and understanding of what that direction looks like, are much harder to admit, because there's not really a cohesive narrative that will say to an admissions committee, I can see this person coming in, I can see them placing when they graduate, I can see them really being somebody who will be a great alum for our school and a real flag bearer for the brand. So I think all of those things kind of play together, and in terms of presenting it for an AdCom, being very clear again in the kind of short term, mid-term, long term is really, really important. One way to do that is to really understand the resources that the school can offer you, and that might be clubs. So if you are looking at moving into finance, you might be looking at a wealth management club, or you might be looking at sort of fintech club, or whatever it is. But again, it's not just sort of saying, I know that you offer this, that's great, it's gonna make me get my job. It's about, what does that sort of teach you in a way? How will you engage with that club? How will you co-create your engagement with the club to both benefit the club, but also to take away, to bring in, gain new skills which will help you with those goals? So within the clubs, within the electives, within the project experiences, you need to demonstrate within your essays that your career goals really are credible. Sometimes people say, should I be specific? Should I say I want to work for, Oliver Wyman, or should I say I want to work for a high growth startup, or how specific do I need to be? It can be helpful if you are targeting a sort of fairly well-known employer, if it is an employer that the school has on campus or recruits regularly. So drawing those kind of links and connections can be useful. Not everybody wants to go and work for a big multinational organization. So there are other ways to introduce the kinds of sectors, the kinds of companies that are not as well known. But if you are going down that route, then you need to be quite specific in your application about how you're going to make that kind of role happen for yourself, and demonstrating initiative. And instead of being someone that just goes, oh, I'm doing an MBA and I expect the MBA to be a golden ticket to my dream job, showing intent, showing purpose, showing that you can do the outreach, and showing that you have the initiative and you're not just completely relying on the careers team to present you with a job is really, really key.
Yeah, you were both in very senior roles in your respective schools in admissions. Would you often connect with colleagues in the Career Management Center to say, got this candidate, they're talking about this sort of transition, or this is their background, to get a steer from your colleagues?
Yeah, absolutely. Quite regularly, particularly if it was somebody who, what David and I used to call a wild card candidate. So somebody where we really liked their profile, but they might have a gap somewhere on their CV, or they might be a little bit unusual. I can think of, we had a wonderful, wonderful student once who he had started his own dive school in Egypt, but he hadn't. I think there was some issue around his degree, and he was just the most wonderful guy. He did really well at interview, but we had a conversation with careers about him, because it was like, okay, do his goals make sense? How is that going to play with recruiters? So yeah, definitely those conversations were happening then and will still be happening now, particularly given, the global situation.
Yeah, the paddy license for private equity.
Exactly.
Now,
Exactly.
with all of that, and even schools with their corporate ties, the word fit, Michelle, in our business school world, it feels that it's a term that gets thrown around a lot. Now, from the inside, of course, schools that you know extraordinarily well, what did authentic school fit actually look like on a page, and how could you tell that someone wasn't just regurgitating things from the website?
Yeah, absolutely. Fit is extremely important. I tell clients from initial fit calls that I do to when I get started with a new client to do outreach and research on the schools they're interested in. Because at some point within the application process, it is going to be very valuable that you're able to articulate that. Because of course, all these schools are amazing. They all offer different things. And as Emma had said, I believe, previously, but they all have a certain culture and there's certain attributes, and you need to learn what those are. And if is what you're really looking for in gaining, in terms of, the people, the experience, the academic knowledge, the skills that you're either needs to still learn or enhance. So fit is really to be specific and understanding what is it about their school, that school that you are writing your essays about, that really, you want to join and really will benefit from. So really being purposeful in showing that within how you can do that within an application, and ultimately, most likely, when you get to an interview, will be key. But fit is really that you do understand the value of my program. And that means the value of how do you intend to show up? And going back to that word being intentional, showing up with a sense of purpose goes back to your career vision, right? That you understand, what do I still need to learn? What do I need to, gain in terms of the skill set? I say this is my toolkit, what am I still missing, and what do I just need to get better at? And how does my school offer that to you in terms of the flexible curriculum, interdisciplinary opportunities, the clubs, the organizations, the culture of, team. And again, every school, I want a big school, I want a smaller school. Location could be very important to you. Being in New York City is key to my success because of X, Y, and Z. Tell Columbia Business School, they want to know, right? So the fit is really, you need to do your homework. And ways to do that are attending. They are back to, going and traveling and doing in-person events if you're able to get to those. Therefore, you can speak. I really believe the value is if they have alumni there, maybe current students, and also admissions officers to talk to, the alumni and, what was your experience like? Find people with similar backgrounds to you. Wharton, they will list all of their Wharton fellows that will be trained and part of the admissions team. They tell you all about their backgrounds. Go find ones that have a similar background, or maybe what you are pursuing. What are they studying at school? What professors are they really, can do research with that are really enhancing their experience? Is there that, opportunity to get it to really build relationships with professors, right? And it's really, again, what are you hoping to get out of business school, and then understanding what the school is offering to you. Some people don't have that business fundamental from their undergrad, and they really do need to build those core skills. Some people have that. So therefore, the flexibility of a curriculum that you can more pick and choose is really valuable to them. So really being clear and specific, and going back to Emma, no laundry list of classes, not necessary. They know what they teach. But this class, I want to name because this is what I'm planning to gain from it. It could be the professor teaching it. It can be the curriculum itself that is going to really, again, arm me to go get that job after business school that I still don't quite have. It's going to inform me. I want to understand what's going on within the real estate, industry right now, and how I can X, Y, and Z. Family business. Huge. I write, I want to really understand what I can bring back to my family business, and the Wharton and the Columbia, that they have these organizations, these specific classes that speak to them. So really, really picking the ones that align with your career goals. And by doing that, you have to really go and again, do your research. So it's not just taking things from the website. And again, going back to, engaging with current students and alumni. Why did you choose this school? What was something that was surprising to you? Asking the right questions. They've been in your shoes. They are usually very lovely, would love to answer your questions and help they usually also love their schools. So they want to tell you about their schools and what they thought was wonderful, right? And then you can make the decision yourself. Is this something that I am looking to invest in my time and money, and what I want to get out of it? So I think, again, this is part of your journey of applying, is really understanding and getting to learn about each school and what they're offering. And I think it's free. I think it's the fun part of the process. I know some of my clients do get a little nervous attending an in-person event, and Michelle, what should I be ready to talk about? But, again, we have great articles about that, but it's the opportunity to just put yourself out there and get to know what your experience could be like stepping on campus in Evanston at Kellogg, and what would that really look like and feel like. So, yeah.
May I just say to both of you, when our viewers know that they're getting great advice, you can tell they start asking questions. There's a flood of questions that we'll be tackling a little bit later on. Of course, this will be recorded and all of the slides shared. But thank you. In fact, there's one question I might take on, because I know, having just reviewed over 700 of the resumes of the Harvard MBA class of 2027, can you tell I've still got the bags under my eyes? I know exactly who had 12 years of professional experience before they successfully applied to HBS. So three of us are going to tackle those questions at the end. There are a couple more themes that we wanted to look at. And London Business School is not alone in offering an optional essay. So Emma, there is an option not to write this one, right? I'm done. Click submit. What's your advice?
Yes. So there is an option not to write this one. I think of all essays, the optional one is one you have to take school by school, because some schools are very clear that it is not intended to be an additional essay. I think Michelle Wharton is one of the ones that says, don't use it unless you need to share something with us that is important. So that might be a gap in your resume. It might be less than stellar grades during your undergrad, and the reasons why. The extenuating circumstances to explain the whys of some of the things in your profile that are perhaps less outstanding than you would like them to be. So some schools are for that kind of information, and they are usually quite clear. If you don't have information like that you feel you need to share, and if you feel like everything else in your application has been covered off and you have shared everything that you want them to know, leave it alone. You don't have to write that essay. It is optional. It says optional, and they genuinely mean it. There are some schools where I think it makes sense to write the optional essay. So London Business School, yes. So they have their career goals essay. They have what makes you unique, which is a fairly newish second essay. And then they have had, for as long as I've been associated with the school, a 500-word optional essay, which is, what else would you like us to know? It goes back to one of these open-ended prompts. So it is an opportunity, and I generally encourage all my clients to write this essay to share an aspect of your profile that you haven't had the opportunity to share elsewhere. So I have had people write all sorts of things in this essay about a guy who ran I seem to be on the water theme today, a surfing kind of camp
You
over
said it was
in
hot
the
in the UK
Philippines.
today, so
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that must be why. He ran in his holidays back in university, he ran a surfing school or some surfing school guides over in the Philippines or somewhere. And actually what that was showcasing was his leadership, the fact that he took himself out of his comfort zone, he went abroad. So different aspects of his profile and aspects that were a fit for London Business School. If you and LBS is a good example because there are a lot of short answer questions in the application as well. So some people have really just covered off everything that they want to say. So don't use it unless you have something good to say. I think that's really important as well. Even though I would recommend people do it. If you think that you can't say something that is really going to add value and enhance your story, then it's probably best to just leave it alone. It is not necessary. You don't have to do it. So it's more of a strategic advantage in terms of adding something. That idea, if you have a passion project, right, something like that can be really useful. But some schools don't require it, and some schools it's actually a negative thing if you just waffle on about something that they don't really need to know. Other schools it can be used to advantage, but again, you have to be thoughtful about it. So school by school, not one size fits all. But it's a good way to offer clarification on things that may otherwise be a bit of a red flag, or where there are questions that have been raised by particular aspects of your application.
it feels like if I was really smart, we could use this slide to wrap up everything that both of you have said. Don't use this essay to inauthentically name drop about vague and
Yes.
incoherent career goals with a leadership role that really wasn't. Well, I'll have to work on that one another time. So we're almost drawing to an end, and I do want to make sure you've guided us so much towards your voice, the authenticity of that voice, the introspection that's involved. But perhaps, Michelle, just coming back to one thing, we're seeing more AI-assisted applications than ever, and so many of them are getting rejected. So, what's your honest take on where AI can actually help in the essay process and where it's going to actually hurt a candidate's chances?
Yeah, I know Emma said it earlier, but I think the AI I've seen my clients, let's just say over the last couple of years, is the ideation, is the, throwing my ideas out there, I guess getting some feedback from the AI, platform that they're using that just helps them kind of get maybe more clarity on, my background. Again, that's what I think Emma and I are here for, and we have those conversations, but I understand it is sometimes intimidating where to jump in and where to get started, depending on how many essays you're being asked. So the AI, I think, asking some questions like if this is the prompt, what are some good themes, maybe themes, but the personal stories themselves, AI can't tell you. They don't feel what you felt. They don't know how you reacted, why you reacted that way. What did you learn, right? They're going to give you generic responses, which goes back to Emma. We know when a client sends us something and it's not from their voice, right? And again, I'm going to go back to that is a big mistake because we're going to go back to connection with your reader and being authentic, vulnerable, and just so the honesty is what is going to make you memorable, is going to make you come off the page. And that's what you want. AI can't do that for you. It can help maybe with, maybe chopping 10 words. Sure, right? Like I'm over the word limit. You might not be as good at that, but the actual stories and how you felt and how you are, again, giving evidence and showcasing your attributes and your values, only you can do that. So as much as you can, I would say, stay away from it until maybe, you need to bring it in for a bit. But I mean, that's going to be the biggest pitfall, right? Is just your authenticity and who you are and who you want them to know. You want them to know who you are and what shaped you and how you've gotten to where you are today.
I assume there's something very fundamental here. Both of you, you would read an application, you'd read a candidate's essays, and then Michelle, you'd be thinking, I want to meet this person. I mean,
That
you
is
never actually said, I want to
100%.
meet the machine.
No.
You want to meet the person.
I mean, back when HBS had the no question, I would say leave them with I want to meet this person in person. Like, I want to ask them more questions. And with any of the essays, we can say that now, because it is this genuine, you've made this connection and you're kind of like, wow, like really cool. They have some good experiences. I want to talk to them, right? I want to engage with them, which goes back to Emma's, there are more video questions now because they can get a better sense of who you are, how you present yourself, how you just make a connection over a virtual device, right? But this is our world that we're living in. So how do you really come to life? And you need to come to life first off the paper. And this is hopefully we've given you some tips on where to start and how to do that.
Well, let's get started. And Emma, perhaps, for someone that's with us today live, or they're catching this on the Fortuna YouTube channel, and they're wondering about where to begin. What for you is the single most important thing that you'd have them do first?
Think about it before you start. So you cannot rush into these essays the day before it is due, or the week before, or I have done it actually over a weekend with one client once, but I strongly do not recommend it. It is a process of reflection. It is a process of introspection. It is taking time to understand yourself and your motivations and your desires and your goals, because if you don't understand them, there is no way you're going to get an admissions committee to understand them. And if they don't have some understanding, enough understanding to ask that question that Michelle said, I want to meet this person, then it's not going to work for you. And you become a ding, and you become one of the many people who are just not even put through to interview because you haven't put yourself out there, you haven't been vulnerable, you haven't been authentic. So that period of introspection is just so crucial. And then nobody's perfect. So there is, I think, this point at the end, in they use failure stories to highlight learning and resilience. They do not expect, AdComs do not expect you to have had this meteoric career with absolutely nothing going wrong. They are people, you are a person, and they want to see that on the page. So be open about the things that haven't necessarily go wrong, but show the growth that you have had from them. And yeah, we would love to talk to you about what that sort of might look like for you over the next few months, or as you're heading into round 1 or round 2. And yeah, we, as Michelle says, we're on fit calls at the moment, talking to great people to understand your journey and how we can help.
Yeah, and it starts with a conversation. I think that this entire session typifies this level of depth and insight. When you reach out to Fortuna for a free consultation, we really do take the time to look through resumes, to have those conversations. Tell me more about this. They always run over, at least mine always run over. So we'd encourage all of you to reach out. We'll set up a time. And have that conversation about next steps. Of course, there's a ton of information. This was one webinar where we really wanted to focus on the storytelling of the essays, but whether it's resumes, letters of recommendation, interviews, researching schools with Michelle, with Emma, and with other colleagues, there's an absolute wealth of information. So we would love you to start that conversation in the coming days and weeks, whatever your plans are. You've already raised some of your questions. There are some great ones. Emma, there was one from that takes us back to careers, and the advice for an older student, or even someone that has a very complex professional background. And so they don't want their essays just to sort of turn into trying to explain the CV. And any thoughts about that one, so that it has that clear personal narrative and isn't just trying to make sense of what they've done?
So I think, and that can be challenging. So people who have that more experience behind them, it's harder to kind of draw that journey in a way that's concise and effective. I think you can look at themes. So what is the kind of common thread that has run through the career to date? You don't have to like dive into all different roles you've had, because your CV will be showcasing that. but think about your motivations and the intent that you had, the reasons that you took the roles, because that should give you an overarching kind of thread that you can pull out as the central narrative, the theme of your essay. But also, depending on how much experience you've had, you need to when you sort of do your research and do your due diligence, think about what kind of program is right for you, because obviously we work with executive MBA clients as well, and those tend to be people that are the upper end of the experience level. But I think leaning into a kind of the story of your intentional journey, if you like. I haven't put that very well, but you know what I mean. So thinking about that kind of thread that runs through.
That's always why we start with the first draft and then we
Yeah.
refine it, right? Michelle, this is a very natural question, and you've alluded to it, both of you, the essays that have been the focus of today's webinar, but they're just a piece in this application puzzle. So just a few thoughts about deciding, well, what's in the essay versus what's in the resume, what might my recommender be sharing, or actually should I be saving this for the interview stage? How do you sort of make those decisions about what goes where?
Yeah, it's the strategy, right? Like, okay, let me look at this school's application, right? And I would start with, as the schools are now going live with their applications for this next cycle, go get an account, sign in, and take a look at the application itself. Some schools like HBS really have videos and walk you through their application, right? And understand, what am I going to be sharing with them through, I call them the data forms piece of the application, right? You're putting together a resume specifically for business school. What is that going to reveal, to Emma's point, about my career, what I've achieved, my experiences, my impact, quantifying those things, as well as my community, volunteer, impact, engagement, undergrad. So I think once you understand what you will be sharing with them through those components, then I go to okay, here are this school's essays. What are they asking you in the essays? Again, how do you build off of the data forms and the resume to reveal, again, they don't understand, to Emma's point, your motivations and how you made the choice to that move. What did that promotion mean in terms of, what did your team look like? How did you develop as a leader? So there is a strategy to what you want to be, again, highlighting and demonstrating evidence of, again, that self-awareness, the team skills, the leadership, and how do you do it? Again, who did you pick as your recommenders? Or some schools now are down to one recommender. What will they really be focusing on? And how do I complement that? Because they'll give their perspective. But if that was my strongest project and I worked on it with them, which is probably why you're choosing them, I can really answer this question about leadership or about a challenging team project, even if there might be highlighting that same project, because I'll be telling them, how did I approach it? How did I problem solve? I would say never save anything for an interview. That is again, I always say my goal is to get you to the interview, then you will prep for that interview. And depending on the school, their interview process, you want to make sure everything is captured in the application. And I will end the answer with this, is going back just to the essays, which is what we've talked about today. I tell my clients, my kind of little spiel now, is I've been doing this a long time, is when you're ready to push submit and you go reread your application, your essays, that you're really proud of them because they told your story. And if you've achieved that, that's all I think Emma and I hope that we can do. That's why Matt said I get very invested and excited for my clients, because that's all you can do, and that then you've done what you needed to do, right? Yeah. And then we'll go from there. But think about strategically the components that school's application lets you, reveal about yourself, and how you can put those, it goes back to being intentional about, what you want them to really, your key strengths, attributes, and where you believe you shine, and where you can do that within the application itself.
Yeah, well, that clicking submit and that sense of personal pride, I'm going to take as part of the response to Stephen, who sort of says, what's the litmus test? That an essay has reached that point. It makes me think about how the Fortuna school packages work, because both of you, either as coaches or with colleagues, we're reaching this point where you'll be at least two of you looking at that application, and given your backgrounds, if you say, I'd have wanted to meet this candidate for interview, I know but Emma, is there a way, do you just know it when you see it, that the essay has gone beyond what Stephen describes as a strong explanation of a career into something that's really a memorable human story? It's a great question.
Yeah, it is an excellent question. And actually, I think you do just know it when you see it. We work with clients, and it's one of the reasons why we say, you can't write these essays in a day. You just can't do it, because often they will go through different iterations, different drafts. I have worked with people where we've got an essay to a particular point and I'm like, yep, this is looking good, we can park this for a bit, we'll come back to it later. So I like to leave a bit of time in between, because when you're working closely with a candidate, you get, like Michelle says, super invested in their story, and you want to be in it with them. And it's really good to take a step back, and that's one of the reasons we have an advisor, so a different pair of eyes on the process. But personally, I like to take a step away and then come back. And I have gone back to clients and said, you know what, this isn't working for me on a second read, let's scrap it and start again. And then yeah, and you know what, at the end of the day, they're always happier with it. And I won't let people submit until I'm happy with it, and I'm a perfectionist. So yeah, but I think that when you come back to that essay with a fresh pair of eyes and go, wow, this is an amazing story, I really love this, it's really showcasing who this person is, that's the litmus test, and that's how you know.
Now, I just let out an oof, but on reflection, because as I think about the success rates that both of you and your clients enjoy, that off the charts. So, if you came back and said, you know what, scrap this, we're going to start again, listen to Emma, listen to Michelle, because they absolutely know. So one final question. A couple of candidates have approached it from a shared perspective, older candidates, and there might even be room for the younger candidates too, the 2+2s perhaps. So an older candidate looking at the 2-year full-time program, maybe even career switching, and any thoughts that just from the essay perspective that we've looked at today, greater clarity, greater reassurance, if they're talking in an essay about how they want to move into private equity and investment banking, but will come out of the school at the age of 35, back to the conversations you used to have with your colleagues in career management centers and how that, just might not be realistic. So, and any thoughts for the older candidate?
So I think if you have been a career switcher, then you want to bring that into your story somewhere, because that's a value add in terms of you are likely to have different skill sets that you can combine to give you an extra edge in some careers. But I also think if you are an older candidate, you need to have a hefty dose of realism, because there are general kind of perceptions in terms of recruiting. So for investment banking, where if you're an older candidate, you are going to find it more difficult. So I would normally have a conversation with a client that's kind of try and remain authentic, but be mindful of the fact that this is going to be a stretch when the admissions committee looks at it. So maybe we're better to present a slightly different angle on it. So the same kind of broad direction, but a slightly different angle that might be more achievable. But then when you get into the MBA program, you go for it and you explore every possible avenue of what what you want to do, because that's fine. Once you're in there, they encourage you to try and explore these avenues. But I do think if you're older, you have to be a little bit mindful about how you present your narrative. And we do work with clients to make sure that that balance of ambition and achievability is managed.
Wow, here we are. I've placed a demand on your time. Look how generous both of you have been. Candidates place demand on your time. You both, so many people want to work with you. So many people come to both of you through referral. I think it takes me back to what you were saying earlier about these aha moments, or even now sharing. I had this discussion with Michelle or Emma, and I'm going to be telling my parents about it. You are changing people's lives on this journey to business school, which itself will be transformational. So to even spend an hour with both of you and to just get some of that insight is always precious to me. Thank you on behalf of our readers. Lots of more resources that the three of us have recorded together, as well as the rest of our Fortuna colleagues. And just remains also to thank Ursula and the team at Poets and Quants for hosting us so graciously. We look forward to talking to you, candidates, in the coming days and weeks. Thanks, Emma and Michelle.